They gave everything. Not in theory, not as some patriotic phrase. They're just gone. I don't say that lightly. I served in the C-130 communities, VMGR 152, MALS 11, MALS 49, VMGR 452, MALS 24. Some of the best Marines that I've ever known were in those squadrons. Yankee 72 and Sumo 41, these are call signs that I will never forget. Both incredibly tragic mid-air losses that nobody walked away from. These two flights were so impactful into my life that you'd be hard-pressed to see me wearing a different lapel pin on my suit. As I've been incredibly fortunate enough to have the time to think about these things, and having recently retired from the Marine Corps myself, the hardest part of the entire retirement process wasn't stepping on the stage. It was actually sitting down to make the guest list. Every name that I wrote down came with the excitement of remembering those experiences that I had with them in the past, and super excited that, yeah, I can't wait to see them when they're here. And then I remembered that many of them couldn't be here. I kept stopping one name at a time because so many of them, friends that I served with, laughed with, drank with, leaned on when I needed them the most, were no longer here. That's when it hit me. If they gave everything, what am I doing with it? That's what this video is about today. We're not talking about theories or tactics. We're talking simply about what it means to lead in a way that honors those who paid it forward through the type of sacrifice that gave the rest of us the chance to keep on going. This isn't a history lesson. This isn't a war story channel, and you're not here for battle reenactments or uniforms and medals. This is still the everyday diplomat. And around here, we talk about leadership and the type of leadership that shows up in real life. We talk about what it looks like to lead with clarity, courage, and purpose. Not in the perfect conditions, but when things get messy and when people are watching, or when it really matters. So, no, these stories are not mine, but they shaped how I see leadership over the years. And if you're in a position where other people are counting on you as a manager, a coach, a parent, or a peer, then I think they might shape how you lead as well. Because as we begin to approach Memorial Day weekend, it's important to remember that this weekend, it's not just about remembering the fallen. It's about asking ourselves a deeper question. How are we honoring what they gave us by the way that we show up right now? In April 2004, Corporal Jason Dunham was leading his squad on a reconnaissance mission in the town of Al-Qarabala, Iraq. His battalion commander's convoy came under attack, RPG, small arms fire, and it erupted just a couple kilometers west of where they were at. Dunham and his team, they moved to support, not with hesitation, but with absolute purpose. And as they maneuvered towards the area, they began receiving enemy fire of their own. Dunham ordered his team to dismount, and then with part of his team, he continued forward on foot, moving several blocks deeper into the situation. There, they encountered several Iraqi vehicles trying to leave the area. Suspicious of this, Dunham had them stopped for a weapons search, and that's when it happened. An insurgent jumped out of one of the vehicles and went straight at Dunham. It turned into an incredibly violent struggle, a close-quarter fight right there in the middle of the street. And amongst the chaos, the insurgent pulls a grenade and throws it towards the Marines. And in that very instant, the type of moment that none of us could prepare for, Corporal Jason Dunham made his decision. He shouted a warning to his Marines, removed his helmet, and then threw himself on the grenade, using the helmet and his own body to absorb the blast. He took the full force of that explosion and lived for 8 more days, but the Marines behind him lived because of that choice. They were able to walk away because Corporal Dunham chose them over himself. Here's the truth. We can spend years building our character, living by our values, training ourselves to do the right thing, but when a moment like that comes, a moment that defines everything, we do not know what we're going to do. Corporal Jason Dunham showed us. He showed us that who you are when it counts is shaped by every decision that you make when it doesn't. He showed us that leadership isn't about saying the right thing. It's about showing up, especially when it's the hardest. That type of leadership doesn't happen by accident. It's built in the moments that nobody sees, in how you choose to carry yourself, in who you choose to put first, and how seriously you take the responsibility of leading others. Corporal Dunham didn't throw himself on that grenade for the recognition. He did it because his Marines mattered more to him than anything else. Most of us will never have a grenade thrown at us, but metaphorically, we're gonna face something like it. A moment where somebody else's safety, dignity, or future rests solely on us. And how we choose to respond, that's where real leadership lives. We don't remember Corporal Dunham just for how he died. We remember him for how he led, for what he showed us about courage. And because every time we step into leadership with that type of presence, we carry his example forward. Corporal Dunham's story reminds us that leadership is sometimes sacrificial, a conscious yet deliberate act that protects others at all costs. But not all moments come with warning. Not all decisions come with the time to think. Some leadership decisions happen in a split second, and you only get one shot to respond. The next story isn't about planning or preparation. It's about pure instinct, about standing your ground when everything inside of you says to run. It's about two Marines who met for the first time that very morning and left behind a legacy that would echo far beyond that gate.
Out there, yes, clear. Loud and clear. Pacific. 2423 line, look at the mole station. On the intercom. C7.
On April 22, 2008, two Marine units were in the process of turning over responsibilities in Ramadi, Iraq. One battalion was packing up, ready to go home, and the other was just starting their tour. That morning, one Marine from each unit, Corporal Jonathan Yale and Lance Corporal Jordan Haerter, were assigned to stand post together at the main gate of Joint Security Station Nasser. It was a small outpost that housed both U.S. Marines and over 100 Iraqi police. These two Marines didn't know each other. They came from different units, different backgrounds. Yale was from Virginia. He was a working-class kid supporting his entire family on a junior Marine's pay. Haerter was from Long Island with a completely different upbringing. Two different worlds, one uniform, one mission, both entirely Marine. These two were told the same thing that Marines on post have been told for generations. Don't let anybody through this gate unless they're cleared. Period. Just minutes into their shift, a large blue truck rounds the corner and begins to barrel down the alleyway, leading right to the entry point. It was very clear that this vehicle had hostile intent, and it was in fact a VBIED, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, loaded with over 2,000 pounds of explosives. There was no time to call for help, no time to think it over, no time to move. They just saw the truck, they raised their rifles, and they held their ground. They fired non-stop as the truck accelerated through the barriers. Iraqi police nearby began to help and they opened up fire as well, but then they scattered and ran for cover like a normal person would do. Yale and Haerter, they did not. They never moved. In fact, they never once stepped back. Security footage later recovered from a damaged camera in a building nearby showed it clearly. They fired until the very last second, until the truck exploded. Both Marines ended up passing away as an outcome from the explosion, but because of their actions, that truck never made it inside. Over 150 Marines and Iraqi police survived because two young men stood where others would have ran. It was estimated that from the time they saw that vehicle, they had 6 seconds. Just 6 seconds. That's all it took. 6 seconds to make that type of decision that most people would hope that they're never asked to make. And here's what's wild about that. There was no time to be brave. There's no time for a heroic speech or any kind of dramatic pre-game moment. There's only time to act. And when that moment came, their training, their instincts, their loyalty to the Marine Corps and the Marines behind them, that's what decided it. We talk a lot about courage like it's a feeling, but real courage isn't emotional. It's trained, it's chosen in advance, and it's revealed when it matters the most. That's what we saw in Yale and Haerter. They didn't just protect the post, they protected everybody inside of it because they understood something that a lot of leaders still miss today. Your job isn't to be safe. Your job as a leader is to keep others safe. And they gave everything to do exactly that. Courage doesn't always come with explosions or headlines. Sometimes it comes in the form of a decision, one that doesn't feel heroic in the moment, just necessary. And while the last two stories came from recent memory, this next one's going to take us back more than a century and a half. The battlefield was different. The weapons were completely different, but the pressure, the responsibility, the weight of leadership, it was exactly the same. The year was 1863, the place, Gettysburg, and on the second day of the battle, the entire Union's army's left flank came down to one man, Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. He was a 34-year-old former school teacher from Maine, not a career soldier, but a quick study in leadership. He commanded the 20th Maine Infantry Regiment, and on that very day, they were ordered to hold the far end of the Union line at a rocky slope called Little Round Top. If they had failed, the Confederate Army would have absolutely certainly broke through the line, and if they did break through, the Union line would have collapsed. Many historians believe that if the Union line had collapsed, the war would have likely gone in a completely different way. That was the context, but here was the problem. Chamberlain's men, they were exhausted. They had repelled wave after wave of Confederate assaults. They were running out of ammunition, some were down to their last few rounds, and some had absolutely no ammo remaining at all. And then word came that one more attack was on its way. He had no reinforcements, no reserves, absolutely no time. So Chamberlain made a call that wasn't in the textbooks. He ordered a bayonet charge downhill. The 20th Maine fixed bayonets, and they ran straight into the advancing Confederate troops, without knowing whether it would work, without knowing if they had the strength, and without knowing if they'd survive it. But they charged, and they held, and it changed the course of the battle and possibly the history of the country. Here's the takeaway. Great leaders don't wait for better odds. They don't freeze up when weighing every single option, and they don't hand the decision to somebody else when things begin to get uncomfortable. They make the call, they take the risks, and they hold the line. Chamberlain's men were tired. They were unequipped. They were surrounded. But they didn't retreat because their leader didn't hesitate. And that's the type of leadership that applies just as much today in 2025 as it did back in 1863. There are going to be moments where your team is tired, where resources are low, and where nobody seems to have the absolute answer. And in those moments, they're going to look for you for those answers. And you don't have to charge a hill or fix bayonets, but you are going to have to decide whether or not to stand firm or to step back. Leadership isn't just what you do when things are going well. It's what you do when holding the line that might be the hardest thing that you've ever done. And sometimes holding the line is the most courageous decision you're ever going to make. In reality, you're never going to be in a situation where you face a grenade. You may never be asked to stand post with seconds to decide the lives of hundreds, and you'll probably never have to lead a charge down a hill with no ammo and no backup. But if you lead long enough, you're going to face moments where somebody is counting on you, and there won't be time to weigh every single option or second guess the call. You'll need to be clear, you're going to need to be calm, and you'll need to be the type of leader who's already done the work to respond with courage, because in that very moment, you're not going to have the time to build it from scratch. You'll face moments that test your clarity, your courage, and your convictions. Moments where your people are looking at you, not just for answers, but for stability. You'll face conflict that could divide your entire team if left unresolved. You'll face decisions where someone's dignity is on the line, and how you decide to show up will either shape whether they feel seen, heard, or protected, or not. You're going to face chaos, disagreements, pressure, maybe not in the combat zone, but in a boardroom, a firehouse, a police station, a classroom, or maybe even your home. And in those moments, leadership is not going to look like a speech or a slogan or a movie scene. It's going to look like showing up when it's uncomfortable, choosing to step in when you could step back, and shielding others when you could protect yourself. That's what these stories remind us, that leadership isn't just about skill. It's about presence, character, the ability to act on your values when the pressure is real. Every single person that we talked about in this video made a choice that reflected who they were long before the crisis showed up. So that's your challenge. Build the clarity right now. Choose the type of leader that you want to be now, so that when the grenade rolls in, or whatever form it takes, you're not scrambling to decide who you're going to be. You already know. Because leadership in the end isn't about being in charge. It's about being responsible for people, for outcomes, for culture, for legacy. That's what we carry forward. So as we approach this Memorial Day weekend, the flags are going to wave, families are going to gather, the cookouts are going to be loud, and the tributes are most likely going to be quiet. But Memorial Day isn't just about silence. It's about the meaning. It's about remembering those who gave everything and asking ourselves, what are we doing right now with what they left behind? Jason Dunham didn't flinch. Yale and Heartier, they never stepped back. Chamberlain didn't wait for better odds. And none of them were perfect. They weren't superheroes. They were human, just like you and me. But they made a clear choice in the moment that mattered the most. And we can too. We may not all wear a uniform. We may not be on a battlefield, but we are all on teams. We're in homes, we're leading projects, companies, families, communities, and every single day that we're given the chance to lead, we're also given the chance to honor them. Not just with words, but with the type of leadership that protects others, that shows up with courage, and makes the hard decisions for all the right reasons. For me, none of this has ever been abstract. When I was planning my retirement ceremony, I sat down to write that guest list, and I had to keep on stopping because one name after another was gone. Yankee 7-2, Sumo 4-1, I served with those Marines, and I carry their memory every day. That's why I do this. That's why the Everyday Diplomat exists, because leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about carrying forward what others can no longer in the physical form. If this message resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe, not for the numbers, but because we need more leaders who understand what this is really about. And if you're looking for support on that path, please check out our growing library of videos on YouTube and consider checking us out at everydaydiplomat.com. But for now, be present, be intentional, and be worthy of what they gave us. Happy Memorial Day, and thank you to all of those who paid it forward so that others may live. This one's gonna be hard. Don't mess this one up.